Have you ever looked at yourself in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back? Not because your face has changed, not because your hair is different, but because your eyes no longer shine the way they used to. There's no spark, no energy, just emptiness. You smile, but it's forced. You laugh, but it doesn't come from the soul. You speak, but your voice sounds unfamiliar, even to yourself. It's not depression. It's not burnout. It's something deeper. Something more silent, more invisible, more dangerous. It's emotional death. And it happens every single day without anyone noticing, not even you. You go through the motions. You wake up, you dress up, you show up, but your heart isn't in it. You do your job, you talk to people, you complete tasks, but it all feels automatic, mechanical, lifeless. There's no passion in your steps, no enthusiasm in your tone. It's as if you've put your soul in a box, locked it up, and thrown away the key. And the scariest part? No one knows. No one sees it. Because you've become a master at hiding it. You've learned to act normal, to pretend, to camouflage, and slowly, your real self is fading away, becoming a ghost that lives inside your own body. Every day, a small part of you dies, not with pain, not with noise, but in silence. You stop caring about the things you used to love. You start avoiding the people who used to matter. You convince yourself that you're just tired, that it's just a phase, that it'll pass. But deep down, you know something is terribly wrong. You feel it in your chest, in your silence, in the long sighs that escape your lips when no one's watching. You feel it in the way you look out the window, hoping something, anything will change. But nothing does. And so you continue. You carry on. You fake it. This isn't weakness. This isn't failure. This is emotional erosion, the slow wearing away of your spirit. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens gradually, with every ignored feeling, with every silenced emotion, with every "I'm fine" that you don't mean, with every smile you fake to keep others from asking what's wrong. You're not living, you're existing, you're functioning, but you're not truly alive. And you wonder, is this how it's going to be forever? Maybe you've stopped crying, not because you're healed, but because you've become numb. Maybe you've stopped dreaming, not because you've achieved everything, but because you've forgotten how to hope. Maybe you've stopped talking, not because you have nothing to say, but because you believe no one will understand. You are emotionally dying, quietly, slowly, silently. And it's time to stop ignoring it, because if you listen closely, beyond the noise, beyond the routine, you'll hear something faint, a whisper, a cry for help, a tiny flicker of your true self begging to feel again, begging to be rescued, begging to be alive. Sign 1, you no longer feel excited about anything. There was a time when the smallest things could light you up inside. A song you loved, a message from a friend, a walk in the evening breeze, a spontaneous idea, a weekend plan. You used to get butterflies just thinking about something fun, something new, something meaningful. But now, nothing moves you. Nothing stirs that joy. The excitement is gone. The passion feels dead. Even the things that once brought you happiness now feel like a burden. You've lost the spark, and you don't even know when it happened. You scroll past things that used to thrill you. Your favorite artist drops a new song, and you don't even press play. A movie you waited months to watch comes out, and you feel nothing. Friends make plans and you decline, not because you're busy, but because you just don't feel like it. The energy to care, to engage, to get excited is missing. It's not that you don't want to be happy, you've just forgotten what that feeling feels like. You're running on autopilot. You wake up, go through your routine, get through the day, and repeat. But there's no joy in it, no anticipation, no "I can't wait" moments. This isn't laziness. It's not lack of ambition. It's emotional depletion. When you're emotionally dying, your brain starts to shut down the feelings that used to lift you up. Excitement becomes rare. Motivation fades. And everything starts to feel flat. You may still go to work, still talk to people, still do what's expected, but it feels empty. It feels like you're watching your own life through a glass wall. You're there, but not really. You might find yourself asking questions like, why does nothing make me happy anymore? Why don't I care about things the way I used to? You think it's just a phase. You think maybe you need a break. But breaks don't fix emotional wounds. You can go on vacation, sleep in all weekend, even spend time doing things you once loved, but the emptiness remains. Because the problem isn't the world around you, it's the world inside you. And that world is starving for emotion, for color, for excitement, but it can't find any. Your mind becomes used to boredom. Your heart becomes used to silence. You get used to the absence of joy. And the worst part is, you don't even fight it anymore. You accept it. You start believing that this is just how life is now. That maybe you've outgrown excitement. That maybe you're just becoming more mature. But maturity doesn't kill joy. Emotional death does. And this sign is screaming at you, even if you can't hear it yet. Relationships begin to suffer. People around you start to notice that your energy is different. Your laughter sounds forced. Your eyes look tired, not just physically, but emotionally. Your conversations lack enthusiasm. You nod, you smile, you pretend, but inside, you're not really there. You're emotionally checked out, and eventually, people stop trying. They stop inviting. They stop expecting you to be present. And that creates even more distance between you and the world. This disconnection can grow into hopelessness, because when nothing excites you, life starts to feel pointless. You lose interest in setting goals. You stop looking forward to things. You stop dreaming. And without dreams, without excitement, without emotional highs, life becomes a gray, dull cycle. Days blend into each other. Weeks pass like minutes. And suddenly, months go by without you feeling truly alive. You start using words like, meh, whatever, I guess, and doesn't matter more often. You shrug off opportunities. You turn down challenges. You say no, not because you're cautious, but because you just don't care. The risk doesn't scare you. The reward doesn't tempt you. You're indifferent. And indifference is one of the most dangerous signs of emotional death. At this point, you may also start trying to force excitement. You might buy things you don't need, binge watch shows, eat for comfort, scroll endlessly. You're trying to feel something, anything, but it doesn't work because forced stimulation is not the same as genuine excitement. It's temporary, it's shallow, it's a distraction, not a cure. You may even start blaming yourself. Maybe I'm just lazy. Maybe I'm broken. Maybe I'm ungrateful. But that self-blame only makes the silence louder. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're emotionally depleted. Your soul is whispering for help, and you've been too busy pretending to listen. Think back to the last time you felt excited, truly excited. When your heart beat faster, when your mind raced with ideas, when you felt alive. That version of you still exists. It's buried under stress, pain, disappointment, and silence. But it's still there. It's waiting for the light to come back. But the first step is noticing that the darkness is real. This sign, this absence of excitement, isn't something to ignore. It's not a phase to brush off. It's your emotional warning system telling you that you're running on empty, that you need to pause, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. Because the longer you ignore this sign, the harder it becomes to remember who you used to be and what used to make you feel alive. You don't have to do anything grand to bring back excitement. Sometimes it starts with something as small as taking a walk without your phone, sitting with a friend in silence, listening to a song from your childhood, writing your thoughts down, doing something new, something uncomfortable, something that makes you feel, even if it's just a spark. That spark matters. That spark is the start. Because when you no longer feel excited about anything, you're not just tired. You're not just unmotivated. You're emotionally dying. And that truth, however painful, is the first step to saving yourself. Sign 2. You're constantly tired even after rest. You sleep, you nap, you lie in bed for hours. But no matter how much rest you get, you still wake up feeling drained, exhausted, as if you've been running marathons in your dreams, as if your body is carrying weights that no amount of sleep can lift. It's not just physical fatigue. It's not because you didn't get enough hours. It's deeper. It's heavier. It's emotional exhaustion, the kind that sleep can't fix and no amount of caffeine can cure. You tell yourself, maybe I just need a good night's sleep. And you try. You go to bed early. You stay under the covers. You let yourself sleep in. But when you wake up, nothing changes. You're still tired, not just in your bones, but in your soul. It's a kind of tired that follows you throughout the day. It shows in your eyes, in your posture, in your tone. You move slower. You speak softer. You sigh more often. And you start wondering, why do I feel so tired all the time? The answer isn't in your routine. It's not in your schedule. It's in your heart. When you're emotionally dying, your spirit becomes worn out from carrying invisible burdens. Anxiety, sadness, unspoken fears, suppressed feelings. Your mind is constantly in survival mode. You may not even realize it, but you're always fighting. Fighting to keep yourself together. Fighting to seem okay. Fighting to not fall apart. And that invisible battle is exhausting. Day after day, night after night. It doesn't let you rest, even when your body is still. You might find yourself needing more naps, more breaks, more alone time, but none of it refreshes you. Instead of feeling recharged, you feel heavier. You feel like something inside you is sinking deeper, like an anchor tied to your emotions, pulling you down slowly, relentlessly. You may still function. You may still do what needs to be done, but you're doing it on an empty battery, running on fumes, running on willpower instead of real energy. And it doesn't stop there. This emotional tiredness starts to affect every part of your life. Your relationships begin to feel like work. Even simple conversations become too much effort. Social interactions exhaust you. Being around people, even the ones you love, feels overwhelming. You prefer being alone, not because you enjoy solitude, but because everything else feels too heavy, too loud, too demanding. Tasks you once enjoyed now feel like chores. Your creativity dries up. Your motivation disappears. Even getting out of bed feels like a victory. You start delaying things, not out of procrastination, but because your mind can't take on one more thing. You want to care, you want to try, but you just don't have the energy. And that leads to guilt. You begin to feel bad about not being productive, not being present, not being yourself. But how can you be yourself when your emotional core is crumbling? And then comes the self-blame. Maybe I'm lazy, maybe I'm weak, maybe I just need to try harder. But this isn't about effort. It's not about strength. You're not lazy. You're not weak. You are emotionally exhausted. You've been holding in too much for too long. Pain, stress, loneliness, disappointment. All of it has built up inside you like a pressure cooker with no release. And now you're living with the weight of unexpressed emotion that your body and soul are no longer strong enough to carry. This kind of exhaustion is dangerous because it's invisible. No one sees it. You look fine on the outside. You show up. You smile. You do what you're supposed to. So people assume you're okay. But what they don't see is how hard it was for you to get out of bed. How long you sat there, staring at the floor, trying to gather the strength to start the day. They don't see how many times you've said, "I'm tired," and really meant, "I'm barely holding on." You start fantasizing about disappearing, not in a dark, hopeless way, but in a quiet, peaceful way. Just vanishing into a place where there's no pressure, no expectations, no noise. A place where you don't have to pretend, where you don't have to explain why you're so tired when you haven't even done anything hard. But what people don't understand is, emotional survival is the hardest work of all. Your body is sending signals. Your soul is crying out. This constant tiredness is not normal. It's a symptom of emotional burnout, a sign that you've reached your limit. And if you don't listen, if you keep ignoring it, it only gets worse. Your body starts breaking down. Your mind becomes foggy. Your spirit fades until you become a shell of the person you once were. You may try to push through it, use discipline, use motivation, but neither of those things can heal a broken spirit. You don't need to push harder. You need to heal deeper. You need rest, but not just sleep. You need emotional rest. You need to feel safe enough to stop pretending, to cry, to speak, to breathe, to let it out. Because what's killing you is not tired muscles, it's tired emotions. And those need care, not silence. So the next time you wake up tired, don't just blame your pillow. Look inward. Ask yourself what's really draining you. What thoughts, what feelings, what unspoken truths are weighing you down? Because the answer isn't in 8 hours of sleep, it's in setting your soul free. Emotional exhaustion is not something to brush off. It's a cry for help from the deepest parts of you. And it's time you listened. Sign 3, you avoid deep conversations. There was a time when you craved connection, when long talks about life, dreams, fears, and feelings made you feel alive, when opening up wasn't scary, it was freeing, when being vulnerable felt like truth, not weakness. But now you avoid those conversations. You dodge them. You change the subject. You keep everything on the surface. You'd rather talk about the weather, about traffic, about what's trending, anything but your emotions. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped feeling safe in emotional spaces. Somewhere along the way, you stopped believing that anyone would understand. When someone asks how you're doing, you say, "I'm fine," before they even finish the question. Not because you're okay, but because the thought of explaining what's really going on inside you feels impossible. You've built a wall, one brick at a time, every time someone judged you, dismissed you, or failed to listen. Now that wall surrounds your heart like armor. It protects you, but it also isolates you. And slowly, you start to believe that no one needs to know the real you. Not anymore. You avoid meaningful conversations because you don't want to revisit the parts of you that are still bleeding. You fear being seen, really seen, because deep down, you know that if someone truly looked into your soul, they'd see the pain, the confusion, the tiredness, and maybe even the parts of you that are starting to give up. So you smile, you nod, you talk about your day, but you never go deeper. You never say what you're really feeling. And after a while, even you forget what's real and what's just performance. This avoidance isn't just a habit, it's a defense mechanism. When you're emotionally dying, opening up feels like opening a wound. You don't want to bleed in front of others. You don't want to be pitied, judged, or misunderstood. So you become your own comfort zone. You keep everything inside, thinking it's safer that way. But what you don't realize is that silence isn't safety, it's suffocation. And every deep conversation you avoid is another opportunity for healing lost. You might still engage with people, you might still laugh, still reply, still share stories, but it's all curated, filtered, edited. The real stuff, the raw, honest, vulnerable stuff, never comes out. You keep that locked away, telling yourself, no one wants to hear that. Or worse, no one would care if they did. And that belief becomes your prison, a quiet, invisible cage that you carry with you everywhere. Eventually, you begin to feel disconnected from the people around you. Not because they've changed, but because you've stopped letting them in. You may even start feeling like a stranger in your own relationships, like no one really knows you anymore. And that loneliness doesn't come from being alone, it comes from being surrounded by people who don't know your truth, because you won't let them. This behavior also starts to affect how you listen to others. You begin to feel uncomfortable when someone opens up to you. You don't know how to respond. You deflect, you change the topic, you keep it light, not because you don't care, but because their vulnerability reminds you of your own, and that's a place you're not ready to revisit. You tell yourself it's better to keep things simple, safe, surface level. But in doing so, you rob yourself and others of the connection you both need. Avoiding deep conversations also means you stop processing your own emotions. You don't talk about them, you don't write about them, you don't face them, you bury them. But buried emotions don't disappear, they grow heavier, they fester, they shape your mood, your energy, your view of the world. And over time, you start to feel numb, disconnected, like you're watching life from the outside, never really participating. You don't laugh as deeply, you don't cry as freely, you don't feel as fully, because you've trained yourself to avoid the depths. And the longer this goes on, the more isolated you become. Not physically, but emotionally. You could be in a room full of people and still feel like you're miles away, because no one really knows you. Because you've stopped letting yourself be known. And that kind of loneliness is far more painful than being alone. You may think that keeping it all in makes you strong, that pushing through without talking about it proves your resilience. But real strength is not silence. Real strength is truth. And the truth is, you're hurting, you're tired, you're emotionally drowning, and every deep conversation you avoid is another breath you miss. You deserve more than surface-level life. You deserve to be seen, heard, understood. But that starts with letting go of the fear, with trusting that your story matters, that your emotions are valid, that someone, somewhere wants to know the real you, not the edited version. Avoiding deep conversations might feel safe, but it's a silent surrender, a surrender of your voice, your truth, your healing. And the longer you avoid it, the more you lose touch with the person you used to be, the person who believed that feeling deeply was a gift, not a curse. It's time to listen to the silence, because in that silence, your soul is whispering, telling you that you're not fine, that you need more than surface-level words and polite smiles, that you need connection, real, honest, human connection, and that begins by opening up, even just a little, even just once, because one deep conversation could change everything. Sign 4. You feel alone, even in a crowd. You're surrounded by people, colleagues, classmates, family, friends, but somehow you feel completely alone. You laugh when they laugh, you talk when they talk, you sit in the same rooms, walk down the same streets, take part in the same events. But inside, there's an emptiness no one else seems to notice. It's like you're watching life through a thick glass window, present but detached. You hear them, see them, interact with them, and yet feel like a stranger among your own people. And it's not because they've changed. It's because something inside you has gone quiet, disconnected, lost. This feeling doesn't come from being physically isolated. It comes from emotional disconnection. You don't feel seen, you don't feel heard, you don't feel understood. You could be sitting right next to someone and still feel like you're miles away. Because the connection is missing. The warmth is gone. And no matter how many people surround you, the ache of loneliness lingers like a shadow you can't shake off. You begin to wonder, why do I feel like this? You have friends, you talk to people, you even laugh with them. But nothing feels real. Nothing feels deep. The conversations are light. The presence feels temporary. You could disappear for a day, a week, even a month, and you feel like no one would notice. Or worse, they'd notice but wouldn't care. That thought cuts deeper than silence ever could. The truth is, emotional loneliness in a crowd is one of the most painful kinds of isolation, because you can't explain it. You don't have the words. How do you tell someone, I feel invisible, even when you're looking right at me? How do you admit that while they're talking to you, your heart is somewhere else, wondering why you still feel so empty? It's a quiet pain, and because it's invisible, most people never ask. They assume you're okay because you showed up, because you smiled, because you responded. But what they don't see is how many times you've swallowed your thoughts because you didn't think anyone would really listen. How many times you've chosen silence because opening up felt like a waste. How often you faked enthusiasm to avoid making others uncomfortable. This fake presence slowly chips away at your soul until you start questioning whether real connection is even possible anymore. And then comes the doubt. You start wondering if you're the problem. Maybe you're too sensitive, too distant, too complicated. Maybe you've just forgotten how to connect. Maybe you've outgrown everyone around you. Or maybe you've become so used to pretending that even you don't know how to be real anymore. But the truth is, you're not broken. You're emotionally starved. You're craving depth in a world that rewards surface. You're craving intimacy in a culture obsessed with performance. You're craving truth in conversations built on convenience. You begin to fear vulnerability, not because you don't want to open up, but because every time you tried in the past, it didn't go well. People didn't understand. They gave advice instead of listening. They made it about themselves. Or worse, they shrugged it off. So now, you sit quietly. You tell jokes. You stay light. You talk about your day, your work, the weather, anything to avoid that terrible moment where you open up and no one meets you there. And that loneliness grows. It grows in crowded rooms, in noisy streets, in shared dinners, in group photos. It grows in places that were once your escape. Now they feel like prisons of disconnection. You start to fantasize about leaving. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet one. You imagine disappearing, starting fresh somewhere else, where maybe someone would see you, really see you. Not for what you do, not for how you perform, but for who you are. Behind the masks, behind the roles, behind the silence. But here's the thing. This kind of loneliness doesn't go away by changing places. It doesn't disappear by adding more people to your life. Because the cure isn't more noise, it's real connection. And that begins with presence, with honesty, with vulnerability, with letting yourself be known, even when it's terrifying. Yet when you're emotionally dying, you don't have the strength for that. You don't have the courage to explain your emptiness. You've grown used to it. It's become your normal. So you keep showing up physically, while emotionally fading further away. And the world applauds your strength, not realizing it's your silence that's killing you. You may even start to distance yourself more, not out of anger, not out of hate, but because pretending takes too much energy. Small talk feels unbearable. Group gatherings feel exhausting. You'd rather be alone in your room than lonely in a crowd. At least in solitude, your emptiness doesn't feel like a performance. At least then, you don't have to fake a smile when your heart feels like crying. And if someone ever asks, you'll say, "You're just tired, just busy, just going through a phase." Because that's easier than saying, "I feel invisible in the presence of people I love." It's easier than admitting that your heart is breaking and no one can hear the sound. This loneliness in a crowd is not a minor inconvenience. It's not a mood. It's a warning sign. A signal that your emotional world is collapsing under the weight of disconnection. And it will continue until you face it, until you allow yourself to be seen again. Not by everyone, just by one person. One soul willing to listen, to understand, to sit with your silence, and not try to fix it. Sometimes that person is a friend. Sometimes it's a stranger. And sometimes it has to be you. Because even in the loudest room, even in the biggest crowd, your soul still whispers the truth. I miss being seen. And maybe that's the first step. Not fixing it, not explaining it, just admitting it, just listening, just allowing yourself to feel the loneliness, and knowing deep down, you weren't meant to carry it forever. Sign 5, you struggle to cry, even when you want to. There's a heaviness inside you, a sadness that clings to your chest like a shadow. You feel it in your throat, in the back of your eyes, in the way you breathe. You know something isn't right. You know there's pain inside you that needs to come out. But when the moment comes, when the pressure builds, when your soul aches, when your mind screams for release, nothing happens. No break, no breakdown. Just silence. Just numbness. You sit there, still and quiet, waiting to feel something, anything. But the tears that once flowed freely now hide behind an invisible wall. You don't remember the last time you truly cried. Maybe you felt the sting behind your eyes, maybe your chest tightened, maybe your lips trembled, but the release never came. It's like your emotions are stuck in traffic, blocked, jammed, unable to move. And the worst part is, you want to cry. You need to cry. Not because you're weak, but because crying used to be a way to cleanse, to feel, to let go. Now, even that feels like a distant memory, like a language your body has forgotten how to speak. When you're emotionally dying, your system goes into shutdown. Your mind stops sending signals to your heart. Your body stops responding to emotion the way it used to. You start to suppress feelings without realizing it. You bottle things up. You avoid triggers. You numb yourself with distractions. And over time, your emotional well runs dry. It's not that the pain isn't there, it's that you've buried it so deep you can't find your way back to it. This inability to cry isn't peace, it's paralysis. You haven't healed. You've frozen. You've become so used to pretending everything is okay that your emotions don't trust you anymore. So they stay hidden, quiet, dormant. And every time you reach for them, hoping for that release, they slip through your fingers like smoke. You're not cold. You're not heartless. You're just emotionally worn down. There may have been a time when you cried over small things, movies, memories, conversations. But now, even the deepest losses, the most personal heartbreaks, leave you dry-eyed. You sit in your pain, knowing it's real, feeling it burn inside you, and yet nothing. You wait for the tears to come like rain after a storm, but they don't. And that silence becomes another layer of pain you carry, a loneliness that only grows. You start to wonder, what's wrong with me? You see others cry and feel a strange envy, not for their pain, but for their ability to express it, to release it, to feel it fully. You miss that version of yourself, the one who could cry, who could fall apart, who could be human. Now you feel like a machine, functioning, operating, but emotionally frozen. This emotional blockage affects everything. Your relationships suffer because you can't express what you're feeling. You can't show vulnerability, even when you want to. People around you sense something is off, but they don't understand. They see the stillness, but not the storm underneath. You may even start to push people away, not because you don't love them, but because you feel disconnected from yourself. And if you can't connect with your own feelings, how can you expect anyone else to? Sometimes the tears come in strange ways, not during the moments of heartbreak, but when you least expect them. Watching a random commercial, hearing a song from childhood, standing alone in the shower. And even then, the tears don't come from the present moment. They come from everything you've stored up inside, waiting for permission to exist. You may turn to distractions to cope. You overwork. You overthink. You fill your time with noise, not because you're busy, but because silence makes the numbness louder. You avoid being alone with yourself because deep down, you're afraid of what you'll find, or worse, that you'll find nothing at all. And that's the core of this sign, emotional nothingness, a blank space where feelings used to live, a silence where your soul used to sing. You don't cry because your heart doesn't feel safe enough to be seen. You don't cry because you've convinced yourself you have to stay strong. You don't cry because you're tired of breaking down and getting back up with no one noticing. But here's the truth. Strength is not the absence of tears. Strength is feeling everything and still choosing to carry on. And right now, your soul is begging you to feel again, to allow the walls to fall, to let the emotions rise, even if it's messy, even if it hurts. Because healing doesn't happen in silence, it happens in release. You may not cry today, you may not cry tomorrow, but this numbness won't last forever. Beneath the silence, your feelings are still there, waiting for you to give them space, waiting for you to stop pretending, waiting for you to stop apologizing for being human. You don't have to force it, you don't have to push. All you have to do is allow yourself to feel, to be soft, to be open, to be real. Because once the tears come, when they finally come, they won't break you. They will rebuild you. Sign 6, you numb yourself with distractions. You check your phone the moment you wake up, not because there's something important waiting, but because silence feels unbearable. You scroll, you tap, you swipe. Not for entertainment, but for escape. You open apps, close them, reopen them 5 seconds later. You binge watch shows you're not even interested in. You eat when you're not hungry. You sleep when you're not tired. You do anything, everything, to avoid being alone with your thoughts. Because somewhere deep down, you know, if you stop, even for a moment, the truth will hit you. And you're not sure if you're ready for that. You numb yourself, quietly, constantly. Not with substances, not with obvious addictions, but with noise, with distraction, with mindless repetition. Your day is filled with activities that keep you busy, but never satisfied. Tasks that look productive, but mean nothing. Conversations that fill the room, but never your heart. You've turned your life into a buffer zone, always active, always stimulated, but never truly connected. And that's because connection would mean feeling, and feeling would mean facing the pain you've tried so hard to bury. You distract yourself from your own emptiness. Because if you sit still long enough, if you allow the world to quiet down, your soul will start to speak. And what it has to say terrifies you. It will remind you of the things you've ignored, the broken dreams, the buried grief, the disappointments you never processed, the parts of you that are slowly fading away. So you keep moving, you keep consuming, you keep running, not towards something, but away from yourself. This behavior doesn't look alarming to others. To the outside world, you look normal, maybe even successful. You're always doing something, always online, always available. But behind the scenes, you're crumbling. Because every moment spent avoiding your emotions adds another layer to your inner chaos. You're not recharging, you're postponing a breakdown. You're not resting, you're avoiding. The worst part is, it's working. Temporarily. The distractions keep the pain just far enough away, but not gone. Never gone. It's still there, in the background, waiting. And the longer you avoid it, the stronger it gets. What started as harmless scrolling has become your emotional anesthesia. What started as just one episode has turned into a nightly ritual of emotional suppression. You're not engaging with life, you're numbing yourself from it. This numbing affects everything. Your relationships become shallow, your creativity fades, your motivation disappears. Because when you numb pain, you also numb joy. You can't selectively mute your emotions. You either feel everything or you feel nothing. And you've chosen nothing because it's easier, because it hurts less. But that choice comes with a cost: disconnection from yourself, from others, from life. You begin to lose interest in meaningful things. You stop dreaming. You stop reflecting. You stop growing. Because growth requires discomfort, and discomfort is what you've been trying to avoid at all costs. You start settling for routine, for safety, for repetition. You tell yourself you're fine, that life is okay, that you're just tired. But deep down, you know, this isn't living. This is emotional survival. Sometimes you catch yourself. You realize how long it's been since you felt truly alive, since you had a moment of stillness that didn't scare you, since you allowed yourself to feel without numbing, without running, without hiding. And for a brief second, you want that version of yourself back, the one who could sit with emotion, the one who didn't fear the silence. But the second the thought appears, the screen lights up, the noise returns, and the feeling fades. You might think you're managing, that the distractions are working, that no one sees the truth. But the truth always finds a way out. It seeps into your mood, your health, your energy. You feel more tired, more irritable, more detached. You forget things. You stop enjoying things. You start drifting away from people who once mattered. Not because you don't care, but because caring would require you to feel, and feeling is what you're trying to avoid. This is emotional death in disguise. A life that looks full on the outside, but is hollow within. A heart that's beating, but no longer open. A mind that's racing, but never resting. You've become a stranger to yourself. And it didn't happen overnight. It happened one distraction at a time. You don't need to erase every distraction. You don't need to throw away your phone or stop watching movies. What you need is presence, intention, honesty. You need moments where you stop, where you ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? And actually wait for the answer. Moments where you sit in the discomfort, not to punish yourself, but to reconnect with the parts of you that still care, that still feel, that still hope, because those parts are still there. Underneath the noise, beneath the screen time, behind the constant scrolling. Your emotions haven't left you, they've just been waiting for you to put the phone down, to turn the volume off, to close your eyes. And listen, you numb yourself because it's easier, but healing doesn't live in the easy. It lives in the honest, in the raw, in the quiet. And until you stop running, your soul will keep whispering, feel me, face me, free me. And the day you listen, that's the day you begin to come back to life. Sign 7, you no longer recognize yourself. You wake up one day, look in the mirror, and something feels off. Not your hair, not your skin, not your clothes, but you. There's something missing in your eyes. A spark that used to be there. A softness, a light. You stare a little longer, trying to find yourself, but all you see is a stranger. A version of you that feels unfamiliar, faded, hollow. You wonder, when did I become like this? When did I stop being me? This is the final and most terrifying sign of emotional death, losing your sense of identity. You no longer laugh the way you used to. You no longer react the way you used to. You don't get excited. You don't get angry. You don't even cry the same. Your personality begins to feel like a mask, one that you wear out of habit, not truth. You go through the motions, say the right words, show the right expressions, but deep inside, there's nothing, just silence. You start forgetting the things that once defined you, your passions, your dreams, your values. You used to stand for something. You used to fight for things. Now, you don't even remember what mattered to you. You feel like a faded photograph of your former self, present, but drained of color. You miss the old you, the real you. But you're not sure where that person went, or if they're even coming back. People around you still see you the same. They call you by your name. They treat you the way they always have. But you feel disconnected from that version of yourself. You hear your own name and feel nothing, like it doesn't belong to you anymore. Like the person they're talking to is someone else, someone you used to be, someone you can't reach now. You stop recognizing your voice, the way you talk to others, the way you talk to yourself. Your thoughts feel foreign. Your reactions feel rehearsed. Your habits feel automatic. There's no intention, no emotion, just repetition. You start to question, who am I really? What do I even want anymore? And the scariest part is, you don't have the answer. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped asking. This loss of self doesn't happen overnight. It happens slowly, subtly, quietly. First, you stop doing the things you love. Then, you stop talking about your feelings. Then, you start avoiding people. And finally, you stop checking in with yourself. Until one day, there's nothing left but a shell. A version of you that exists only to function, to survive, not to live. You may still smile, you may still post pictures, you may still say I'm good when someone asks, but inside, you know the truth. You've lost yourself, and the world doesn't even notice. Because you've learned to hide it well. You've learned to wear the costume. You've learned how to be okay without being you. And every day that goes by like this, another part of your soul slips away. Sometimes it hits you in the quiet moments, when you're alone, when the distractions fade. You remember who you used to be, the way you used to dream, the way you used to believe in things, and your heart aches for that version of you, the one who had hope, the one who laughed without faking it, the one who could sit with pain without being consumed by it. That version feels like a ghost now, close but untouchable. You try to get back there. You revisit old hobbies. You listen to old songs. You read your old journals. But instead of feeling comforted, you feel distant, disconnected, like you're reading someone else's story, like the memories belong to someone who died and you're just the shadow they left behind. And the deeper you sink into this feeling, the more the world starts to blur. You stop making decisions. You stop setting boundaries. You stop trying. Because what's the point when you don't even know who's making the choice? You become passive, numb. You let life happen to you instead of living it, and you convince yourself that this is what adulthood looks like, that this is what maturity feels like, but it's not. This is emotional erosion, identity loss, a quiet unraveling of the soul, and it doesn't have to be this way. You haven't disappeared. You've just gone quiet. You've just buried yourself beneath pain, silence, and fear. And your real self is still in there, calling out, asking you to come home, to remember, to return. Not to who you were, but to who you are. To the part of you that still believes, still feels, still hopes. But you won't find that person through noise or distractions or perfection. You'll find them in the stillness, in the questions, in the small brave moments when you dare to feel again. When you dare to say, this isn't me. I want more. I deserve more. Because the greatest tragedy isn't death. It's losing yourself while still being alive. And the greatest miracle is finding your way back. One piece at a time. Find your way back before it's too late. If you've seen yourself in any of these signs, even just a flicker of truth in the silence, then hear this. You are not alone, and you are not beyond saving. Emotional death doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in slowly, day by day, heartbreak by heartbreak, silence by silence, until one day you realize you're just surviving. Not living, not feeling, not being. But survival is not the end of your story. You don't have to stay numb. You don't have to stay disconnected. You don't have to keep pretending you're fine when everything inside you is breaking. You can feel again. You can cry again. You can care again. You can return to yourself one truth at a time, one breath at a time, one choice at a time. It won't be easy. The journey back to yourself never is. It means facing the pain you've been running from. It means sitting with discomfort. It means allowing space for honesty, even when it shakes you. But it also means healing, freedom, light. It means becoming whole again. Not perfect, but real. So pause. Look at your life. Not with judgment, but with compassion. Ask yourself, when did I stop feeling alive? And listen, gently, patiently for the answer. Because that answer is the beginning of your return. The world doesn't need a stronger version of your mask. It needs the real you. The one who feels, the one who hopes, the one who's willing to show up even broken and say, I'm still here. You are still here. And that means your story isn't over. Not yet, not even close.